Welcome to another episode of Close. I am joined by my good friend and colleague. What's your name again? Mike Flynn.
Last time I checked.
Last time I checked,
Yeah.
Mike Flynn.
I'm glad I've been promoted to good friend and colleague.
Colleague and good friend, not good
Okay.
colleague.
All right. That's fair.
We are joined today by, super excited to be joined today in person by Jonathan Iger. He's the CEO and president of Sage, which is one of New York City's most established office real estate firms. As a fourth generation leader of a 100-year-old family business, Jonathan is reimagining what office spaces can and should be in a post-pandemic world. And that's what we want to talk about today. So Jonathan, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it, guys.
Once we start, you might no longer look forward to it. So it's good that you're looking forward to it now, and we'll see how things
We'll
go.
see how it goes.
Yeah, we're locked in here.
Yeah.
I think Zach locks it from the outside.
Well, why don't we start kind of 30,000 foot view? Just kind of give us a high level overview of what Sage is and your role as CEO, and maybe a little bit about your background, how you kind of came into the role.
Sure. Sage is a rebrand of Sage Realty Corporation and the William Kaufman Organization. William Kaufman Organization was formed by my great-grandfather in 1924. So we celebrated our centennial last year. We're 101 years old now.
What was the party?
It was a little delayed. We were a little busy disposing of some properties and expanding. But we have this beautiful amenity space in one of our properties at 437 Madison Avenue, Oasis. And so we hosted, it was less really about, we've seen a number of companies celebrate their centennial, and all respect to them. And, they'll invite politicians and make this, a huge public facing thing. And for us, it was really an acknowledgement, not just of our 100 years, but how we got there. And that's really through our partners. And some have been with us 60, 70 years, right? There's this painting company, Albert Perlman Painting. Started obviously by Albert Perlman. That's in their multi-generation, now run by Randy Perlman. They've been doing painting our buildings for 60, 70 years.
We'll reach out to them for royalties from this podcast.
There you go.
It's free advertising.
And everyone should hire them for painting. They do residential as well. And it was really acknowledgement of our success, is shared with them and was built on their shoulders as well, beyond my great-grandfather and his two sons. So it's awesome.
Sounds like it was more celebration of the journey to how you got to today, which is versus like a PR event, which is very cool.
Very much so. And for me, I actually did not understand like the context of 100 years. I think it's actually hard to grapple with at times. So to me, it was like just another event, even though I think it was quite a momentous occasion. Yeah. And writing the speech, the gravitas grew for that evening. And then when I got there, 15 minutes later, my wife showed up, and I've got two young kids, a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And very quickly I realized, like, if we survive another 100 years, or successful for another 100 years, the likelihood of them not being at the next centennial event is pretty great, that they're not going to be there. And I think that like contextualized it for me. And then the night became, I think very, very special. So
my kids think that you die at 100. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So their understanding of death is when you turn 100, you die. So that contextualizes it in a different way, I suppose.
It would make it a lot easier, actually. I don't want this to become about life and philosophy, but that actually would be so much easier.
There's that good movie with, or I think it's a good movie with Justin Timberlake, where like time is a commodity.
About time.
Oh, yeah,
about time. And so like there's you can actually, living day to day is not great, but you give me 100 years, I think I can do something. So Sage is a rebrand of William Kaufman Organization and Sage Realty Corporation, which was our property management arm that we started in the late 1960s. When we brought, property management and eventually leasing, asset management, all those components in-house. As I mentioned, William Kaufman had started the company in 1924. His two sons, Melvin and Robert being my grandfather, joined the business after serving in World War II. Melvin in the European theater, my grandfather in the Navy in the Pacific. And then they were off to the races, basically.
So you joined in 2010.
I joined at the end of 2010.
So talk to us about kind of what your personal journey was, and how hard was the transition when you joined? Were you looking to make big changes? Was it more incremental? Walk us through that.
I didn't know what I was getting myself into. To be honest, this was not a family business that the door was open to, right? So it wasn't even, hey, as my great uncle would say, learn to shave on someone else's beard. So, go to college, go to law school, go to business school, get into something real estate related, build your own skill sets, and then bring those skill sets into an organization, which I think is a great approach.
Neither of us learned how to shave our beards, but
no, and that was every time I showed up to the office unshaven, even if it was like, 5 o'clock shadow, my grandfather would say, couldn't stand close enough to the razor. I mean, he would literally shave at 5 o'clock in the office. But yeah, it's been an interesting career journey. So, my father, right, who's not blood related on the Kaufman side, right? It's my mother's father. That was Robert. Joined the company as general counsel in the late 1970s, had a 10-year stint as general counsel, and then years later came back for another stint, assisting and leasing up the portfolio and doing some other acquisition stuff. That's really how I got exposed to the business. It was that second turn, and my father still to this day types with like his index fingers like this. Doing a 130-page lease, that's going to take a long time. So when I was done with homework, this was kind of like right at the beginning of high school. I have these like, not nightmares, but, I'm sitting in a chair. It's like 9 p.m. and he's dictating. I'm making edits in Microsoft Word 95 or whatever it was at the time. And it was only a nightmare because it's one of those chairs that, like leans back. So you would never realize he's always got his hands on the back of the chair and I'm trying to type, but I'm literally going like, wobbling back and forth. And I'd be like, can you not? But that was my real first exposure, right? Obviously I would visit my grandfather in the office, but when you're young, you don't know what that means to own an office building or to manage a property, to actually be the developer. And so naturally inquisitive, I would ask questions, but I never like went into college or even during that time period thought I'd be in real estate.
What did you want to do?
When I was looking at colleges, I thought I was going to be a marine biologist. I loved sailing and diving.
It wasn't because you like George Costanza.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I never played golf, so I'm not going to pull a golf ball out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure. I had a number of older friends that I got connected with in DC, rather than making friends in college. Actually, like made friends outside of college who were really successful in their mid and late 20s at that time. And a bunch of them were in real estate, and just spending a lot of time with them, started to gain an interest, just generally speaking. And then was provided an amazing opportunity. Art Rubel, who at the time was running a company called Wesley Capital. It was a real estate centric hedge fund. I had an opportunity to intern there, and kind of fell in love with real estate and the financial component, and then was able to parlay that into a really unique opportunity, kind of an internship, extended, work consultancy with Starwood Capital. And, they throw you in the deep end there. You're, working on Argus, and Fridays was investment committee meetings. And, my second investment committee meeting, underwriting a property, actually land deal in Houston, and, head of acquisitions is being asked a question, and he's like, oh, well, John put those numbers together. John? And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And, but I love that. And then to try to wrap up real quickly, I also had an entrepreneurial bent, and so actually left Starwood, worked on 2 different projects. One that came to fruition was a company called Urban Grad Realty, which I started and ran for about 2.5 years. And that was a residential brokerage company, marketing directly to graduating college students. Should have been a lead gen market, company basically. And, pretty hard at 25 to be running your own business, but try to run your own business where all your employees are independent contractors. And then you realize one day, like legally, you're not allowed to say, "Hey, you have to be in the office at 7:30," and little frustrating as you're, just learning to operation. And then when the GFC hit, through people like Art, and obviously, we all know the Barry Sternlicht stories, and so many others of how they made their bones during the RTC days, right? During the savings and loan crisis. I grew up on that. And I was like, here's the opportunity. And so my uncle, on my father's side of the family, so not related to the Kaufman side, was an attorney and actually written the N series for the RTC and was running a boutique investment company with a core focus around real estate down in DC. And I was like, the RTC's coming back. This is it. And moved down there and worked with him for about 2 years, helping run his boutique firm, taking on like a VP COO role, and doing most of the underwriting and analysis. And then out of the blue, it's 2010 summer, and I'm loving what I'm doing in DC. And my grandfather asked to go for a walk, which is the first time in my almost 30 years at that time that he's ever said, let's go for a walk. And we go for what seemed like an hour walk. It was probably like 12 minutes. He did not say a word, which was not atypical of him until like we are 5 feet from the house, and he just turns, and he goes, I'd like you to come work at Sage. At which point I said no. I'm like acquiring properties and
Which is probably the answer you wanted to
stuff.
hear, right? I would guess.
Yeah,
Like that's
maybe.
probably the first answer.
Probably, yeah. Although he looked at me pretty surprised and disappointed, and we talked and what would that look like? I'd never been on like, property management side. We were no longer developing or doing acquisitions at that time. And he convinced me to come aboard, and then taught me my first lesson where I was going to be making less money, less upside. We're not doing acquisitions, so there's no points on deals. There's no carry interest, and I was taking a pay cut, but I didn't realize how much of a pay cut because my first paycheck arrives, and I'm doing the math, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right. And I go into his office, and I'm like, Pops, I call him Pops. I'm like, Pops, I think there might be a mistake. And I hand over literally like the old school, like, printed check. And he looks and he goes, and I said, that's gross. That's not what we agreed upon. And he looked up and, took a moment. He goes, yeah, I changed it. What would you like to do? I'm like, what am I going to go now? I'm going to move back to DC. And he made right at the end of the year, and but I think he was setting the tone.
Yeah.
And then we were off to the races. So yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into when I first came.
How do you think, you had kind of like I won't call it a zigzaggy run up to coming back to the business, but certainly like brought an array of experiences, entrepreneurial experiences, your time at Starwood. Now that you're CEO, how do you, like, looking back, how do you think that path has kind of influenced how you approach the business?
Tremendously. I think so many of us, in particularly society, think of ourselves as entrepreneurs, but until you actually ideate a business, form it, build it, and then if you're lucky enough, sell it, and of course, operate in that time period. I think that's some of the greatest skill sets, you can ever build, even if you fail. Just fail and don't lose too much money, or at least other people's money in doing so. I think particularly in that experience, I mean, I think I know I've accumulated different skill sets throughout, and I don't know if I would have been able to do that if I'd just been with one organization. Yes, of course, you'll accumulate skill sets. You'll build. I think it's a little bit more of a linear path.
Yeah, that's what I meant in saying, I use the word zigzag very inartfully.
Yep. No, I like that. And, so I thought I was like hot shit on Excel, right? At like 20 years old, and I go to work at the real estate hedge fund, Wesley Capital. And, 3 days in, and their VP Gives me my first research project. He's like, okay, I want this done, in a week or probably by that Friday, whatever it was. And I was like, I got this. And then he unplugged the mouse. Because he's like, you should be able to do all this simply on the keyboard with Excel shortcuts and everything. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then you rise to the occasion and, beyond writing, I'm just memorizing and practicing, shortcuts and stuff like that.
Now you could use ChatGPT.
I mean, ChatGPT, there's this AI Excel program called Shortcut that you could really just speak and have them do it. And yeah, it's amazing, obviously, what's out there. But I think it's building, these different skill sets across the board, and definitely on the operational side. I think too many people don't realize how skill sets built in operations can translate across. And I recognize the importance of that. So when I went down to work at P&L Investments, the boutique firm that was started and run by my uncle, you know, beyond doing acquisitions and effectively being an analyst, I was like, I want to be deep in the operations of the business. And yeah, I think it really set me up for success once I got to Sage, and I noticed over time that there was, well, I like that, zigzag. There was also certain continuity and approach, as I look back on it, which really translates to what we've been attempting and I think successfully stood up at Sage today, which I know we'll talk about. And that's, where do you find opportunities to provide value? Whether that's to your investors, your employees, obviously your customer base. So for example, like with Urban Grad Realty, if we were your broker to find you an apartment, one of the things that we had was, it was called a Ready, Set, Go box. And it was this green branded box that at lease signing, we would hand over to you. It was basically a shoebox, right? And it had everything that we thought you would need on your day one move. And I'd moved purposely like 4 times in New York as I owned this company, and leading up to it, even though I didn't want to move necessarily, it was like, I'm going to go through this experience time and time again. So what's in that box was like a tape measure, hanging nails and a hammer, toilet paper, paper towel, and like Clorox wipes. I mean, I had moved packing, right, toilet paper, and then you're 4 hours into your new apartment and you're like, where did I pack that? Like, so all those things. And I think that's like translated through.
They're going to say like $5,000 in cash. That would have been the most useful.
That would have been awesome too. But commissions weren't that big. Again, these were graduating college students, not Upper East Side retirees. That would have been a more lucrative business. I just didn't know how to market to them. So, yeah.
Let's talk about what Sage is doing now today. And I think one of the things that stood out to me, I read an interview you gave with the Commercial Observer, and you talked about how you want Sage to kind of be a brand like similar to Marriott, for instance. Can you just talk about like what that means? And I'm hearing how that some of that, like just by the box you just talked about, like that, I think the logical conclusion is like branding, right? So, like, you talk more about how you want Sage to be synonymous with that kind of brand and where it is in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been you could say 101-year journey, but really a focal point of ours for the last 7 years. And I'll briefly say, where I would say it came out of, right? The light bulb moment was, I was speaking at a conference. I'm on a dais with only owner operators, all throughout, New York City. And it was the last question of the Q&A, and someone had asked, and this is like almost peak WeWork time, right? Sometime 2017, 2018.
So just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
We were probably in one of those WeWorks at that point. So we started on WeWork in 2016.
So, well, I definitely want to talk about them, because back then, right, I don't do it today, but, anyone I would meet, I would ask, like, where do you work, right? And we'll zigzag back, but like, this is the power of brand, right? If it was 2018, you guys are working in a WeWork, and I asked you, where do you work, right? more often than not, you would say, oh, I work in a WeWork. Not, oh, I work in a WeWork in 780 3rd Avenue, in 777 3rd, right? If you ask someone outside of a architecturally significant property, i.e. Seagram's building, GM building, Lever House, right? Maybe instead of saying I work at 50 Hudson Yards, you say, oh, I work in Hudson Yards, right? So those buildings, I would say, have name recognition, but I wouldn't define that as brand, right?
It's more cachet, right? It's more like it's status.
It's status, exactly, right? And so we're all asked this question, and I'm the last one to answer it. And as everyone else is providing answers, I'm like, I disagree. That's just blatantly wrong. And it gets to me, and where I thought like this is a really easy answer. I actually said, I don't think any of us understand on this day is the importance of that question. And if you'd like to give me your business card, I'm going to think really hard about this, and I'll reach out and provide the answer. I don't think I ever got the business card, but I did go into this rabbit hole of, what this question was. And when I came out of it, the answer, had I been given that business card, and my answer still obviously is that WeWork up to that point was the only identifiable commercial real estate brand ever. And there's a difference between knowing a company's name and being able to identify their brand, right? If you guys had decided to move from one WeWork to another, the aesthetics might be slightly different, but there would have been a continuity in the aesthetics. Obviously, the way that one location was operated, they were trying to at least achieve almost identical operations, right? And we see this across many industries. I think the one that's easiest to be correlative is obviously the hotel industry, right? You could stay at a Four Seasons in Bogota. You can stay at a Four Seasons in Tokyo, in San Francisco, in New York. The aesthetics are going to be different. Maybe one has a pool, the other doesn't. One has a 2-star Michelin restaurant, the other just has a really solid restaurant. But the experience that you're going to have, and that's the key component of it, the experience that you're going to have in a Four Seasons is consistent, irregardless of whether you're paying because of market dynamics, $240 a night in Bogota or $2,400 a night in Tokyo for basically the exact same commensurate room, right? And so this just took us on this journey where why did WeWork own this space, right? Not flex and co-working, but why were they the first ones to really actually realize that commercial real estate, I wouldn't say should be, but could be a branded experience?
Yeah.
Where some of us have been doing this for 100, 120, 130 years. And obviously commercial real estate as an industry has been around for centuries. And then you start to look at all these other industries of like, brand exists everywhere, but it doesn't exist in our buildings. And some of that has to do with the structure of our business, outsourcing to third-party management, different market dynamics and things like that. But our intention and what we've been working on is to transform Sage into an identifiable commercial real estate brand. Yeah. And so whether you're working in 777 3rd Avenue, 437 Madison, 2 Gansevoort, among a number of our other properties, again, the aesthetic's going to be different. But the experience that you get as a tenant and what we call as a member, which is anyone who has effectively building access, right? All the employees of those tenants, is going to be consistent. And at the heart of that, when you look at like the hotel industry, it's not about amenities, right? It's not about service product offering. I mean, those are all layers of it, but the foundation is standard operating procedures, right? Ritz-Carlton front of house reception position has over 110 SOPs to follow, right? Because everyone in that position in every Ritz-Carlton around the world is going to operate that way. And that's how you create, consistency.
I have about a dozen questions for that, but the first thing that comes to mind is you went into this rabbit hole where you're kind of diving into this question. It sounds like, were you studying the hotel industry? Was that part of?
No, I had brief experience being exposed to hotels and to, obviously to a lesser extent hotel operations.
Yeah.
When I was at Starwood Capital, Barry Sternlick at that time was running Starwood Hotels, right, which was two completely separate organizations at that point.
To me, Starwood is synonymous with hotels, but
Right.
I still think of it that way too. Yeah.
Most people think about it, right? So that was my, outside of staying at some hotels, that was my exposure to it. And then, once that light bulb moment, I was like, okay, let me understand the actual models behind that. Why hasn't this been imported, right, into commercial real estate? And there's a number of hurdles to it, right? But that's, when I really started to educate myself on what's known as the flag model. In the United States, 70% of hotels are flagged. And 30% are independent. And in Europe, it's basically flipped, where 30% are flagged and 70% are independent. That doesn't mean sole ownership of a hotel, right? But not under one that is not vertically integrated. That's through a franchising licensing agreement. And we've never seen this in commercial real estate, right? JLL, CBRE, Newmark, Cushman Wakefield, Hines, right? These companies manage, hundreds of millions of square feet, doing third-party management. But they've never stood up a brand, and they can't, because they can't keep that consistency, right? One owner wants them to operate this way. The other owner wants them to operate that way.
so it is.
Interesting.
I had another question that I'll circle back to, because now we're on the franchising.
We're not doing that, but yeah.
Well, but I am curious. Do you foresee that trend in the hotel industry kind of infiltrating the commercial real estate industry as things evolve, as things progress, or do you think that there's market forces that would not permit that kind of expansion?
Yeah, look, I think this is a new concept for commercial real estate. I think it can be effectuated in a lot of different ways. The way that we're doing is not looking to franchise and license, right? I think you can do that when you reach a much larger scale, potentially. For us, it's both on the acquisition side and simple asset light third party with existing, what I'll call owner non-managers, right? So, financial institutions and owners who own the property, but currently have JLL or CBRE or Hines or whoever doing the property management. And you come in and you would quote unquote flag their property. So, it's not just, we're going to do your property management. It's now known as kind of BOE, building operations and experience. We're going to come in, we're going to take over soup to nuts outside of leasing, building operations and experience, but we have our own SOPs the same way that Ritz-Carlton and actually any hotel brand has. And everyone's going to be trained and they're going to follow these SOPs. We have a signature set. We have signature music that's actually curated based on our brand and then the neighborhood and the tenancy of that specific property. We have brand standards around floral arrangements in our amenity spaces and our lobbies. Everyone is uniformed in a very specific way. We talk about what is the Sage way internally, and that is we look to elevate every customer touch point where we can. So you're looking at does everything point to an elevated experience across our property, whether that's for the visitor, the vendor, the occupant, their employees. So to go back to the question, we're not looking to franchise or licensing. Maybe 10 years from now, we've reached scale and we're comfortable doing that, and that we can have some quality control assurity. But the brand integrity is too important as we, start this journey.
Who's responsible for overseeing? It sounds like a lot of kind of detail management, and hopefully your kids aren't picking the music because it would be all K-pop Demon Hunters. But are you heavily involved in that, or are there like how does that work? You think?
Yeah, you start with really, really strong brand guidelines, right? I mean, I think our brand guideline book is probably somewhere north of 100 pages now, and that's not like with what
Typing with 2 fingers.
Yes, exactly. Yes, everyone has to type with 2 fingers, particularly if it's a 100-page, Word document. So it starts there, right? Where there are pages about, obviously this is how a standard brand guideline book. This is how you use your font, and like for us, it goes so much deeper, right? And so, not that a third party consultant, advisor, whoever you're going to, but it creates like a cheat code in a sense, right? If you're working with good operators who understand brand, then you're simply going to a florist and you're saying, here's a 3-page synopsis of our brand guidelines, right? This is the tone that we look to set. This is the imagery. This is right what we're trying to purport to be to our customers. And then it's a lot easier for them to come and fit within that ecosystem, than to try to describe, who's your, ideal customer and going about it in a more circuitous, route. Everyone in the organization has to buy into it. And obviously, leadership, department heads, right, need to buy into that and understand, I think, back in the day, and still we come across this, we'll be sitting around the table and someone will say, we launched X, we're done, in a sense, or, it'll be great. And we literally have this online platform for SOPs. And I'm like, is the SOP fully written now? Um, and that's something that actually comes not from business, and it's stuck with me, and I must use it maybe once every like 3-4 months. And it's the story of it's a fifth grade English class. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but and the English teacher's like such a cool assignment. And the English teacher had us write a paper on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We all did our papers and we came back in. And he had on his desk, 2 jars of peanut butter, 2 jars of jelly, spoons, knives, bread, and he'd pick up a person's piece of paper, he'd start reading through, and he'd try to make the sandwich based on what they wrote. No one says you got to open the bag and take out 2 slices of bread, and it's a mess, or like it was such a valuable lesson that stuck with me. And one that, we use as a teachable moment, across our organization. And SOP really needs to be written as like, this person has no background. You hired a front of house reception. You hired akin to a Sage concierge or a member experience manager or assistant or an engineer. Okay, great. They've been doing it one way, or, because that's the way JLL taught them. Now we've hired that, like, so yeah, that's how you create that.
This hits home because it's, as lawyers, obviously we're hiring people from different firms, sometimes right out of law school. And we do in some cases we have to take for granted that they know what they're doing in certain things, but the nerd in me wants to fire up, my word processor and just start typing for a week.
I just want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Me too now.
No, but that makes a ton of sense. It's almost, it's like, it's programming basically, but it's for operations.
That's it.
And yeah.
I want to quickly come back to the question I had before and then kind of segue into user experience. I don't want to take too much more of your time, because we could probably sit here.
I can talk about this for hours. Yeah.
And I think we could too, because Mike and I started this firm together 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So
and we were. Yeah.
And we were. So a lot of the lessons that you're talking about kind of hit home. But do you think, I think the idea of centering the office experience for tenants as a user experience focused initiative, I think we're going to get there anyway, but COVID kind of fast tracked the process.
Yeah.
So do you think it was kind of fortuitous? Like you come out of the pandemic and you're like, all the ideas that I had right before the pandemic, like this is what tenants now want. This is how.
I don't
want to say the pandemic was fortuitous.
No. It is unbelievably frustrating. To speak honestly, obviously we move societal impact of COVID.
I was living in the city at the time. I'm sure you were too. So it was awful.
It forced me to leave the city for, I think, what was almost the longest, or maybe the longest time period of my entire life. I don't know I'm not speaking specifically Sage and this idea around, experiential commercial real estate, experiential office building. If that has helped or hurt Sage specifically, only in that, I had a saying, and I'll leave the curse words out of it. Even leading before we had this light bulb moment when we were ideating on certain things that fell in now, but we've been talking about experience for a number of years leading up to that light bulb moment. And then of course, coming out of COVID, I would say. And I would talk to our team as, I don't want to be, driving the train. I want to be laying the track. Like that's how far ahead as a first mover, I think we currently are in the market. This is like 2016, 2017. We were the first commercial real estate company to build out communal outdoor space in our building in Midtown Manhattan. We did it in 2 different buildings, right? We brought an amenity space to market in 2014 that by 2021, I actually demoed that space. I mean, most people thought I was crazy, right? The capital, investment that we already made. And I said, that doesn't suit the market anymore. And we literally demoed it, doubled its size, designed it completely differently. Same certain utility, but design level completely different. So I think we were light years ahead of organizations in the way our thinking, some of the programs that we were already standing up. And I think COVID forced other commercial real estate owners to, pick up the pace and jump on this. So did that shorten the gap between us and our competitors? Probably, which is a frustrating thing. That being said, I think what you touched on, though, is that it became so much more apparent that experience is a necessary component, if not a market leader, for commercial real estate going forward, and more apparent to the customer. And so now I think the customer will pay for that.
You made a pretty important distinction before, though. There's a difference between amenity and user experience or customer experience. Like, it seems to me like many landlords have been reactive and are just kind of throwing amenities into their space because that's what it feels like it's going to take to attract tenants. But what really is going to attract tenants is what you're talking about, which is I feel something when I come in here. Like the same way that you walk into a Marriott or you walk into Disney World, right? And there's an emotional resonance with walking into that space, and that's I think kind of the more durable.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of how we differentiate ourselves operationally. Beyond like the nuts and bolts that we've talked about, and even if someone else picked up on, hey, I'm going to implement SOPs and I'm going to be methodical and intentional with my amenity spaces. So what I think is probably the most impactful concept from the hospitality industry, that not just within commercial real estate, but in many other industries that can and should be utilized, is a concept known as surprise and delight. So if you've ever been in a hotel and you're laying by the pool and it's an abnormally hot day and we're talking more 5-star hotels at the moment, right? Not to say that they do not do surprise and delight in 3 and 4-star hotels. And you're laying by the pool, normally hot day, and someone's just walking by with a silver tray or nice wooden box with ice cold hand towels, right? Or they're coming by and there's, a little smoothie shot, right? And I think like the cynical person, is laying there saying, oh, they're trying to sell me a smoothie. I'm going to take no, that's not it. Like, they want to surprise and delight you throughout your experience and stay with them. Yeah. And if they can understand and build data on you and know you as a customer, they can elevate that experience. So one of the stories I've told my entire staff, there's 2 really good ones. The most recent one was I was staying at a Four Seasons with my wife, my older child, my son, who at that time was only 3. So I'm at the Four Seasons, and my son at that time is really into both building and cooking. So the Nespresso machine in the hotel room has been taken down. We've got pillows. We're like, he's literally like built out like this restaurant. Now it's time for us to go to dinner. And so we write a note to housekeeping, right? Like, hey, and then we had to come from him. Hey, this is my kitchen. Please don't clean it up. I'll clean it up like when like service is over, whatever. We come back from dinner. Housekeeping has left a note for my son, right? They have left also kids' plates and silverware, right? And they said, hey, we noticed that your restaurant doesn't have any plates and silverware and it's missing napkins or whatever. And so we've left some. Yeah. We are now in a 2.5 day pen pal relationship with the housekeeping staff. Right. And I took every one of those and scanned them and showed my team. So we have built this database on all the people who work in our buildings. Yeah. And we utilize that data to surprise and delight. And what we try to do every day is provide surprise and delight to our members, the individuals who work in the building, to the tenants, right? So we find out that you guys just won a huge case that you've been working on for 5 years, right? And it's in a legal review, trade magazine. Like we're looking for that stuff. We understand that. It's your 10-year anniversary. That's an enormous milestone for someone who started a company and as partners. You're going to get something from us, for that 10-year anniversary. Yeah. And then, even just at the property level, right? I mean, the chocolate chip cookie is a great idea. Too many people, and it's going back to that idea of like being reactive, and we're very much in a copycat industry. People start talking about hospitality, and without ever running a hotel or, right, like they're not even thinking about their own experience in a hotel. They're like looking at like, oh, what makes hotels successful, and really not understanding. And like, oh, I'm going to bring in that amenity. I'm going to do this. And we do it ourselves, right? Like we put on building wide activations called Sage Social. I find what's just as impactful, if not more impactful, is bake off 50 Toll House cookies, put them on a tray and just put them on your reception desk. And as people walk in, they grab them. Yeah. Too often we're afraid like, oh, we're not doing a building wide. Best experience you can create is that individual taking the cookie, bringing it back up to their office, sitting down, their coworker looking over and be like, where'd you get that? Like, oh, they're passing it downstairs. And that person goes downstairs, and what most people are fearful of, we're excited about. Yeah. The fear is that person has now left their office, left doing what they're doing, taking an elevator ride down, getting there, and now we're out of cookies. Right? If your people are properly trained, right, and have the right approach, now you actually have an opportunity to provide the most elevated experience, which is you lean over and you say, Sally, Joe, I'm really sorry. We ran out. Next Tuesday, we're doing XYZ. It's going to be from 10 to 11. Come on down. If you're busy and I don't see you, I'm going to set 2 aside for you. I'll bring them up to your office. Yeah, that's awesome. And that is the experience that you get in a Sage property. As long as we do that consistently, that's how you kind of build that brand.
I think I was talking more about the durability of user experience. And I want to tell one story that I have about a JW Marriott, actually.
Yeah.
Because, we've stayed at some beautiful hotels, gorgeous hotels. Our honeymoon, we stayed at the nicest hotels in Italy. We went to JW Marriott in Mexico. And we ordered lunch one day, and my wife took a drink of her drink and said, this is amazing. The next day when she came to the pool, they walked over with the drink, handed it to her. I can't tell you a single thing about any of my user experiences in any of these gorgeous hotels in Italy, but we constantly tell this story to friends and family about this one little moment that cost them what, $2, whatever it cost, nothing. And so it's not just about like, we're going to go back. Now we're telling everybody else, well, where should I stay in Cabo? You got to stay at the JW Marriott, because listen to this story. Like this highlights what your experience is going to be there. Yeah. So you're not just like keeping your tenants happy. You're creating this network of people who know about the Sage brand by hearing about these little moments like the cookies or bringing stuff upstairs.
Once you have a brand, you can have brand advocates, right? We don't do, we do like, NPS scoring, right? The definition of someone, when you get that, how do you rate us overall? Would you recommend us? And if you ranked a 9 or a 10, right, those people are literally known as advocates. And that's it, right? Like if you experience any of the stories that we just told in an office building and you're saying that at dinner, right? And the person sitting there be like, oh, my lease is coming up in a year. Like they are going to check out a Sage property, whether we land them or not for a multitude of other reasons, but we're going to be on their list and that's it.
And it's just going to get more and more into that realm because now you have, we'd call ourselves elder millennials, I guess, but like we're coming into that leadership post where it's like we have to pick the space. A lot of the employees now are going to be Gen Zers who are even more into that. The word that came to mind when you're talking about that is you have an aura. And like I would use that word even before it was whatever, brain rot, but like that's a thing now that's going to resonate and it's what they're looking for. And it could be very subjective, but it doesn't need to be because we're all, in the end of the day, we're all human and we all have like that need for surprise and delight, it's great stuff.
Like I said, we could talk for a long time about this, but want to be conscious of your time. So if people want to know more about the properties that Sage has in the market or are coming on the market, want to learn more about the Sage experience, where should they go? What should they look?
Website's the best place to find us. So sagerealty.com. It's an entirely consumer facing website. So you go to most other ones, like, yes, you'll find availabilities, but it's all about, I don't know, it's typically like for their LPs and like, these are our capabilities. You don't need to know that we do leasing. You need to know what it's going to be like to live, work, and play in a Sage property. And I think the website does a really nice job. And then, there's obviously specificity around specific properties on, this property has your backup generator, has this piece, or, is located here and here's transportation and things of that nature. But our website, experience_Sage on Instagram, I think is a great way to see, what it's like to, again, live, work, play in a Sage property as well.
Awesome. Jonathan, this was great. We really appreciate the time. And, we'll have to have you back on to talk about the market as things progress.
And, just how fun and bad Disney experiences can be.
We could talk about that offline. I have plenty of advice for you on that stuff.
Well, I appreciate the time, guys. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
For more on all things real estate and the law, subscribe to this and our other podcasts. Follow Bergstein, Flynn, Knowlton, and Polina on social media. Subscribe to our newsletter and go to bfklawoffice.com. That's bfklawoffice.com to learn more.